This
Now, if you
conference
see
will
that,
now be recorded.
generally, what we use if the clock in and clock out is not available is we normally click on the record working time. So, and this is a regular timesheet where we will have to go and as an employee, I'll have to go and start recording the hours. So, for example, I have to manually record the hours here. And in this case, I can do a possibility. Let's say for today, I can go and navigate to any of the days and then enter the data accordingly. So, this is called as a normal timesheet where you do not have the clock in, clock out feature. So, but let's say if the employee has to use the clock in clock out feature, which is just like the functionality and the feature wise it will be similar to the what the clock in the punch in punch out that we use through the biometric systems, or we have something called as an where we do a web um, clock in clock out, those kind of things in order to have it available, and the employee shouldn't be using or do not have a choice. Let's say you're going to office and you're punching in. Now let's imagine if you wanted to record in hours for yesterday where you have not punched in properly, you will have to go and manually do it something, right? So that case we will be able to do it when we do not have a clock in and clock out. But let's say if we have to do it for today only and it has to be very accurate, then the clock in clock out is an additional feature upon timesheet where you will have to use or enable these kind of feature. So this is called as the tile that you see here, record working time is for a simply timesheet. But if you see the clock in time, the tile that you see here is actually for the clock in, clock out. Now, when you choose the clock in and clock out, you have only one option. So either you can view the timesheet and go and manually record it, what we have done. You can go through that as well as also from here. But let's see if you wanted to punch in or record the hours. Now, if you see this, just click on clock in. So it's the initial clock in. So you can just click on clock in. So you don't need to enter any dates or time or anything, right? So system automatically picks up today's date and the timings accordingly. Now you will not be able to record it for yesterday or today because this is how the system will work according to what we have configured. Now it will also not allow me to clock in again because if you look at it, so it will ask me for either are you starting a break or a clock out. So this is for the options. You will not see the clock in again because it's already one event which has got created because of this activity, right? So there's no time difference. I'm not pulling in anything. But this is called as a clock in. And how do you enable it? Now you can do this kind of clock in either via mobile, or this is called as a web clock in, or you can also integrate via biometric systems. So so this is called as a clock in clock out feature. We'll quickly see what all things are needed and what is the difference between. Now just keep in mind of the Justin Martin and we'll see how the timesheet for this employee looks like. Okay, let me log in as another time employee. Yeah. I'll just pick up Justin Martin's timesheet and we'll compare what is the difference between the timesheet with the enabled clock in clock out and the timesheet without enabled clock in clock out. So when you look for Justin Martin's timesheet, so if you look at this section, you see this time events which we have created at 7:32 minutes when we have created a clock in. We have seen that clock in button, right? The moment we enable that, this will come and sit here in the clock in. Now let's say let's do a clock out. Let me create another one, and here you will have an option to um, it will not allow you to go future dated, but let's say this is what the time is, and here you can select if it is start break. Okay. Now, so this we would have done again using the record clock in and clock out. Just imagine that if you are already working in the office and there's a integration available for biometric system and your timesheet, then what would have happened? Now you might have clocked in and then you might have punched out. Then let's say I have did a clock out. So if you see this, the moment I clicked on start in, it will show me clock in option. That means if I'm starting my day back again, which means after coming from break, I'm again doing a clock out. Again I'm doing the clock in. Now let's see how the pairing happens here. Let's wait for another minute. Let me pull up. See this one. Yeah, if you see for this one, okay, I'm just showing you this example. Similarly, this record was done after a certain period of time using the record clock in. So first at 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday, I have done a punch it using the record clock time access, and then after like 1:30 I have started a break again, which is I clicked on the start break, and then when after like 2:46 I have came back to office, and then at 4:10 I have logged out. Now if you see, these are the events which got recorded using that record clock time event. Now how this will integrate with timesheet is automatically system will pair it up. Now how the system will pair it up is, if you look at this one, the gaps that you see here, right? So if you see this, the first clock in and start break is actually your normal working hours, and it has been mapped against your punch in punch out. Okay. Now if you look at this, the break, right, the starting of break and clock in, which is means you are starting the break and you are coming back again from the break, so this hours will be considered as your break time. And then from the break onwards, the clock in onwards to the clock out, this is generally considered as your second type of working, and then again is mapped to the punch in punch out. Now this happens automatically. You don't need to do anything. Now just go back how the pairing happens is, yeah. If we look at this one, the pairing has already started happening. Now let's say this is at 8:30. It will not allow me to take a future dated. I'll do clock out. Now, if you see this, the moment I did a clock in, clock out, system has automatically started putting up the values here. Now it will see what time I have clocked in. It will pair up with the start break, and then from start break to clock in, whatever the gap was there, right, that is considered as your break. And then from the break to the clock out, it will take another period of session for recording. Now if you might have imagined, like, I have done only these events, how this has got automatically created is what the configuration that we want us to see. Now in order to enable this section, again the same thing, this will require a separate license which is called as in time tracking clock in clock out license, which is which is again a separate cost incurred. Now that is generally it has to be enabled in the provisioning settings. There's something called as an SuccessFactors time tracking feature. Along with that, we have something called as in clock in and clock out. So once you enable in the provisioning, which is a backend of the system, then it's the same process. Again, you have to come back to employee central settings. And then when you enable that in the provisioning, you will see the flags that has got enabled in this particular section. So if you see this, for enabling the clock in clock out, you will have to definitely enable these two sections. So SAP SuccessFactors time tracking, clock in and clock out. So this can be enabled only in the provisioning. The moment you enable there, you can get it enabled here also. Then later on, you can wanted to switch it off, you can switch it again using the clock in clock out. So this is once you enable this, the next thing that we do is in the business configuration. So it's nothing but the data model. So when you go to the data model, inside the job information where we have enabled the timesheet and time of elements, right? Similarly, we'll have one field which is called as an time event, time type group event ID, which is this time event type group ID. This has to be enabled and keep it mandatory or non-mandatory based upon the customer's requirement. If all the employees are using it, you can keep it mandatory. Otherwise, you can keep it as non-mandatory field. So this can be enabled. And in case if you wanted to configure the propagation rule, you can create a propagation rule like using the different parameters of job information for whom the clock in clock out is applicable. Generally, it is applicable across the employees if you are using a if you're visiting the office every day or you wanted to track the hours according to the tracks in that you can enable it. So once you enable it here, the next part of the section is always the roles. This is the common part of uh, section where once you enable the system or you enable the new feature, definitely you have to go and enable the corresponding fields and then come back to the regular your role based permissions and enable the fields that is needed for performing these kind of new features. So in the permission roles, again, it is applicable across the various roles. Like for example, system admin will have or super admin will have complete access right from editing, deleting, or making any changes to the configuration. Normal employee will have a part of access record button plus creating the time events where they will have to go and enter the clock in, clock out. Manager will have an permissions like view, and HR admin or a time admin might have an access, or a supervisor if somebody is working in a hourly employees or a manufacturing unit, they will have certain things where somebody might have missed a punch and they wanted to do manual correction. So that kind of activities are needed for the way other roles like HR admin or a supervisor. Now, for a normal regular employee, as a normal employee, he will, apart from the permissions that is required for time off and timesheet, he will also require this permission. This is for simply a normal regular employee. Whatever we have seen, right, record, clock, time, tile, that can be available using this particular section. Plus, you will also have to give a permission at the employee central effective dates where you have enabled the new field. Mm, So this one. For employees, you can give view for onboarding team or regular normal employee, normal HR admin or anyone. They can have edit or uh, delete buttons. Apart from them, we have something called as an object permissions where you will need to have time type view permission. Similarly, this is just for viewing for an employee. This is nothing to do, but this specifically permissions are needed. Wherever you see this synchronized time type is actually your administrative permissions. Processing paired for time event for employees, definitely only view permissions is needed. Manual time event for employees, you can only view it, but other super admin activities that they do, right? They will need the edit and import permissions. Clock in clock out time type derivation for employees, it will be view, it is not even needed for the normal ESS role, but for the super admin and other roles they will need the edit and import access. So this everything is an import access, it's needed for normal regular employees just for viewing. So attendance request is again view for the regular employee, um, but for the admins they will need a complete details for the configurations as well. Similarly, this is an administrative permission. For super admins you can create everything, but so for the end users or the managers they don't need to have this, they can only just view it. For normal employees they can view the time events, they cannot make the change to the time events. Now, these are the only things which we normally take care under configuration, common configurations that we need to give to the activity, right? And there are only, this is very simple configuration, not like a timesheet one. So if you look at the previous ones which we have seen, it's just a section that got enabled on the left and on the right hand side at the bottom, but however it has automatically got and sync the data with the timesheet. So again when it is coming back to timesheet, it is the same evaluation that an employee will have to perform. Like if you have configured the various time valuations, it will work according to what the time valuations you have defined in the system. So yeah, so this is what I was talking about. So we are only doing this part of section via web check-in or clock-in. Let's say if it's an integration is enabled, then it will come through the integration only. You don't even have to do this until unless if there is anything which you will have to manually go, and let's say you have missed out a punch, and if you wanted to do a manual creation, that is when you can go and create a manual creation. This also sometimes some organizations will not agree to give it to the employee. This again has to go back to HR admin for the corrections. Now, so how the system will understand whether it was manually created? So if you see this, the icon that you see here is, this is a manually created event. But for the clock in, we have specifically gone through the employee's profile and we have done a clock in, right? So that it will not show because it is actually your web check-in. This is actually a web entry. Now, for every event that was got created, right, it will automatically capture my system date and time and the pairing status, right? So pairing is nothing but every in the system, it will always follow up with one of the pair. Now, in order to have this entry, right? If you in order to have this entry, now this entry is caused because of the two events. What are the events is 7:32 is your clock in event and 7:35 is your break event. It got paired up. Okay, this got paired up, and so if you look at this now, it will automatically show you this was got generated because of this time types getting paired. Now, if you look at the same scheduled break, it will show you why the paired was happening, and it will show you that from the break to the clock in, again back to the clock in, there was certain difference, and this got paired, and that's the reason you will see this paired. And similarly for the punch out also, for the punch in punch out also, for this particular time, the clock in and clock out event got created, and that is the reason why this record got generated. So that's how the system will see, and this is what the configuration we need to perform, like which event normally as a standard process, this is called as a start event. Okay, this is called as a start event because it's starting, because it's followed up with the next starting event. It's just again an attendance type of an event. Only the clock out is actually your end event. That means this is end event. When you the moment you enter the end event, that means your attendance process is completely done for today. But let's say you have missed a clock out punch and you only have clock in event. So this will continue till the clock out comes into picture. So for any part of an section or an attendance, there can be number of in events, which means these ones. You can have clock in multiple times. You can have start break multiple times. You can have clock in multiple times, but at the end you can have only once a clock out. If you're doing a clock out, that means automatically the system will pair up and it is understand that it is done for the day. Okay. And how do we do that configuration is this only two simple configurations. Let us look at the configuration clock in. So configure clock in clock out is actually the configuration part. So this is similar to what we create in the time type. So whatever we have created, the attendances, if you remember, the on-job training, administrative task, right? Similarly, this is equivalent to the time types in the timesheet. So these are the events that we create, time type events that we create. So the external code, you can provide an external code. The title, whatever you wanted to see on the front end, that you can give as a title. You can also mention the description here. And here, if you see, there's one start or a stop event. You can create the event types with the event called start and a event called stop. This is what I was talking about. So here you can have n number of event types called start. But you can have only one out event, which is the stop event. This is called as a stop event. And how the pairing happens is start will always follow with the start, and the pairing happens. Start will always follow with a stop. Okay, this is how the pairing will happen. This is a normal pairing. So start will always uh, stop will always start follow up with the start. Start will always follow up with the start. Just imagine clock in is again a start event. That means you are starting the recording of an attendance. Start break is just a continuation of your attendance. That means these both are start and start. That is the reason why you see this has got paired up. Now start break and clock in is again a start and start event. So you will have again a pair up between this. Now when the start is coming into picture, you can have stop event only. So these are the pairing events, which means start can follow stop. So that is the pairing event, ideal pairing event, and the thumb rule for the clock in clock out. So similarly, you can create n number of clock in clock outs. These are like end break, end lunch break, web clock in types. Now these are the various time type events that I have created. So wherever you see this log out is actually your stop event. Okay. Now this is like you have created n number of attendances, but depending upon what kind of requirement. Now whatever you add it on the employee's time profile is actually your clock in clock out groups. So like see, let's see for Justin what time type group was added. For this particular employee, this is clock in clock out. Group one was attached to this employee. So now how do we configure that is using the clock in clock out. You have to individually create the events here and then you have to group them together. This is similar to the time profile. So clock in clock out groups are nothing but you are grouping the type of events that an employee can use for his recording purposes. So in this case, the person who is using the group one is actually this section. So just click on this and see. This is called as in group one. The front end, whatever you see here is clock in, clock out. And here you will have an option to select which type of attendance type is applicable for this group. Now, while recording, you might have seen clock in, you might have seen clock out and start break. But ideally, what happens is it's just a clock in and clock out. No matter what it is, you do a clock in and then you come out. It's actually your clock out if it's a biometric system. Then again you do a punch in, then it's a punch out. Like for example, technically speaking, when before corona, like before covid, we used to go to office, right? Normally we have a punch in punch out. We used to have the access cards where we used to do a punch in. There's no option that you can select whether it is a break start or something. You can either punch out and you can leave to office, you can leave to home, or you can go back after your. So that's what normally it's just a clock in and clock out. Here you have an option where you can select the type of events. You can give that. Otherwise, if you're doing an integration totally, then it's okay that you can select only the clock in and clock out, because system will automatically do the pair up from the back end. So this way you create it and you can enable the location capture. Now this is specifically relevant if you're traveling frequently and your job profile needs a travel. Then if you wanted to capture the location also when you're trying to log in, that you can enable it. And what kind of, if the location is being captured, whether it should be captured in the English language or what kind of languages that you have, whatever is enabled in the system is available here. So you can have that and then just save it. So that means this group is available for the, this is similar to the time profile. So this clock in clock out, when you enable it for the time type event group ID, then the system, this Justin Martin was able to use those clock in clock out events. So once you enable this, this is the simple configuration that you do. And the standard other configuration that we do is, now you might have wondered, like here I just created the clock in clock out. Now how the system has taken up the punch in punch out as part of this is what you configure here. So this is the object synchronized. Sorry. Not this one. One second. Clock in clock out time type derivation. Now you have to define what kind of time type derivation you need to do. So here, this is a standard uh, object that we create, and the object should be with this external code only. If you are using the clock in clock out, this is standard external code that we use for mapping the system. Now this works exactly like this. Let's say for this particular employee, what is the time recording profile? I want to see the time profile. So in this time profile, punch in punch out is generally considered as a default attendance type, because if I'm using the integration with the biometric system, there should be one attendance type by default, just like what we have defined, right? The main break and attendance type. Similarly, if the system is having the data with an integration or with a clock in clock out, you will have to define this main attendance type. Okay. If you have not defined this, system will not able to map it against when the data is coming from the external systems. Right? This you have to this, and this has to be part of your available time types. Now just this will go hand in hand with this kind of configuration. Now when you have clock in and clock out enabled, our system should understand, right, whether clock in has to be mapped against this time attendance. Right? Now what you define and where you define is in this object called as in clock in clock out time type derivation. Here you have an option to select category or select a time type. You cannot have both together. Okay. Now, this is the single object where you can enable each and every attendances that is being used by the employee. So in this section, you will see different attendance types, but whichever attendance type the employees is having is automatically mapped accordingly. Now, the clock in, clock out, and start break, you might have seen it has got automatically linked with the the time type profile that we have used. So it was linked with the punch in, punch out, and also the main break that is being used here. So see this punch in, punch out is actually your default import attendance type, and the schedule break that you see here is because of the main break that is defined at the time profile level. Because here we have defined category as attendance. This is just a layman or a general term, attendance and break. That means when you define the category as attendance or break at the clock in, clock out time derivation level, system will automatically check the time profile, the associated time profiles, default import attendance type, and brain break, and then it will map accordingly. But let's imagine, instead of do, let's say you have not defined the default import attendance type, then system will definitely ask you to maintain it here what type of attendance you wanted to capture. In here also, it will it will not allow you to capture separately, because the clock in and clock out should be going in a pairing, right? So it will allow you to capture only one type of an attendance. You can select, instead of import attendance type punch in, punch out, you can select the working time also. So if I would have selected only working time instead of category attendance, then the system would have picked up, instead of punch in, punch out, it would have picked up working time. So that way, if you define the category as attendance here, it will look at the import default attendance type and the main break enabled here. If you have not mentioned the category and you have specifically mentioned a time type here, like for example, if anybody is using a web clock in type of an attendance, then they will be recorded with the event type called as an recorded working time. So this way you can enable and map the events to the corresponding attendance types at this object level, and then you're done. So there's a backend job which will take care of it, and the system will automatically map it and provide the. So this is generally for a normal employee how it will look like. Let's say if a HR has to manage the data, if somebody has missed out a punch in, they have managed the data. They will have to manage the data. Then this is what the configuration, this is what the page the HR uses. So it will, let's say Lata might have missed out some of the pairing event, right? Though, and so the year she can actually create, or she can actually maintain the data manually. Now every department will have their own supervisor. They will have to go and reach out to the supervisor in order for the corrections. Or you can also have a ticketing system where they can ask them to do a punch in on behalf of them at what time they wanted to have that event type mapped against. So here they can, since it's a manager or an HR admin, they will be able to see everything. But depending upon what kind of employee, so for example, for Justin Martin, it's only clock in, clock out, and break, right? So the manager or the person who is doing this manual corrections, right, they will have to follow up for that particular employee, search for that employee. Since in this system it's only available for Martin, so they'll be able to see only those kind of attendance available for them, because the event group ID for this particular employee which we have assigned only has these three types of attendances. So that's the basic configuration that is needed to be done for the clock in, clock out. Rest everything remains same again. So this, when this comes into the system, the evaluation that they have to do is the same evaluation. Whatever you have defined in the previous sessions, that is applicable again. And now you might have thinking, why, how let's say if it is a part of an integration, what is the object that I have to provide for the integration team is its external time data. So whenever you're using the clock in, clock out, so when the two events are paired, this is the generated log at the backend, which the system will create via integration and map it in the system. So when it comes to the system through the integration, this is the data that we need to uh, that the data gets generated via integration, and this is how the timesheet is being captured here. So for corresponding every day, there's an external time record with a start time and end time, right? So for integration team, what we need to provide is we need to provide a data template called as an we download this template, import and export data, and the template that you want to give is the external time data. So this is the template that you need to give them. So here you can mention whether the processing will happen, the date will automatically pick up by the biometric systems, the time and start time and end time will be automatically picked up by event system already. So the time type you don't need to define because you might have already configured here in the data synchronization details where we have done the mapping. But let's say if you have to manually add it, the mapping where you use this, right, attendance type that you choose, that you can also mention it in the integration itself. But instead of doing that, we normally don't prefer doing it because system will automatically pick from the mapping that we have provided. So what their time is only to give us the user, so the number of hours if they wanted to process, otherwise system can automatically calculate as what you have seen here, right? So the start time, end time, and the type of attendance, the category is always an attendance, and if it is an external system or what kind of, if it's coming from the outside or with a web clock in, then it's an external system will automatically pick that. These are not mandatory fields, only mandatory field is external code, the start date, and user. Start time and end time is a by default one. So on the start date only it will pick up the start time and end time because the biometric system has that data. So this is the template that we need to provide to the integration team, and we can work with them what kind of data we wanted to process in the system, and the system will take care of it. So this is about the integration. So normally the integration side, functional team doesn't take care of it. They will only provide the data and the corresponding attendances that we need to configure. We tell them, and there's a standard iflow data iflow which is there in the ECP or CPI. If they're using the CPI integration with other payroll systems, they have the standard data iflow, and we also make use of replication objects. Like this is data replication configuration where you enable it if you wanted to enable it for ECP payroll or any type of third party payroll systems, and you can define what type of attendances you wanted to map it, which type of attendance or absence type you wanted to configure. So if you click on the time type and the attendances that you wanted to replicate, this is actually replicated to your the SAP. If you're using the SAP systems, then it goes to your attendance types, which is basically 2001 type of an attendance where your absences are tracked. Now, if you wanted to track it against the 2003 info type, where your planned working times are generally considered. The planned working times are nothing but it is generally taken from the work schedule. Now, if you have a payroll or accounts, like normally the time accounts, right, the data I'm talking specifically about the time off. So you have processed certain accounts where you have the posting types, whether it is a uh, absence, whether it is a payroll, whether it is a payout that you wanted to replicate, then you choose the time account time type, and time account types. So depending upon the enablement of this data replication configuration, you can enable the type of replication you wanted to process. So I'm not going much more technical here, but normally we define what type of replications we wanted to have it in the data replication configuration. So this is about the integrations. Just a brief, like what a functional team need to know, where you enable it. They will provide you the system, and then you have to enable certain configurations at this level, like what kind of an attendances are you using in the system. Those attendance has to be configured at the time type level. And you can also define whether you have to replicate the employee class, what type of employee class data has to be replicated, that you can add it here. What type of time account types you wanted to replicate, you can add it here. So this is the basic configuration that we set up at the SF level, the functional level. Otherwise, this is also most of the integration teams takes care of the replication side. We just have to provide them the data. That's it. So this is about a normal clock in, clock out configurations. So reports, there's a standard reports already with the SAP. So normally there are standard templates for the time off and timesheet. So those templates are generally comes up in the XML format. Now, if you wanted to have a specific XML format uploaded, you can download it from the help.sap.com. The format and the type of so if you see this time, company wide time off, time snapshots, time profile overview, time profile, time account overview. So these are all standard templates available by SF. You will have to just download from the SAP portal. We have something called as an help.sap.com, and that is accessible only by the certified consultants or certified partners, where you can download that and you can use and you can directly upload it. So you have an option also in the sales demo, you can actually export it. So when you export it, you will have it in the XML format, and from the XML format you can directly import using this. So here you will not have to report anything, but you have to directly you can actually browse in, and then you can import it into the system, so the report is available for your usage. So that's how the standard reports are available. In case if you wanted to make the changes to the report, is again the ORD part. So you can go, if you know the ORD, you can go and make the changes to the reports as needed. But definitely only reports that are applicable and supported are Canvas reports, because the time off and timesheet is based upon the framework called as an MDF, and the MDF frameworks are generally supported with the reports called as in Canvas only. So that's about reports. There are only very limited options for the time off and timesheet reports. Now they're still bringing up the various types of reports, uh, which are already generally available as an XML. You just have to browse it from them and then import it into the system, which you wanted to use in the system. So that's about reporting. And when it comes to the timesheet configuration workbook, right? So the timesheet configuration workbook and the clock in, clock out configuration workbook is one and the same thing. So it's called, both together are called as a time tracking configuration workbook. So when you look at the configuration workbook, it's called as a time tracking configuration workbook. It depends upon you whether you wanted to use clock in or clock out, clock in, clock out feature. You can have it here because there's nothing specific configuration related activities that you need to perform here, right? So ideally, this if you look at the configuration workbook, these are general RBP settings that you have. all the fields that is available, I mean that all the permission that is needed for the regular time sheet and clock in clock out, these are enabled here. Depending upon the roles, you can enable and speak to your client whether they wanted to use, whether they wanted to have this is a standard set of roles, or if they wanted to add it anything, you can add specifically for them. So now you can specify the permissions here. You will have certain yes and no values here, whether you wanted to have it read or view options, read or write options. Those can be given, and then enable the permissions accordingly. So time types, generally what I do is, since we have the configurations at a very processing level, right? Normally what I do when we go to the customer is we only take these types. Now, from here onwards, it's actually your uh, configuration that we enable in the system. What we generally take is what type of an attendances they wanted to capture, right? And whether it is country specific, and only the workflow we capture it. So we take attendance types, we take allowance types, and the combination for it. The time profile is nothing but a combination, right? If a USA employee is there, what type of attendances are applicable? Let's say if they are splitting it again, if the salaried employee has a separate time profile, and the hourly employee has a separate time profile, what are the relevant attendance types has to be configured, that we do it here. But otherwise, what after this, we do not go further. We have a normal uh, statement of work, which generally we taken policy from the organization. We generally speak to them like what is their existing policy, what they do currently. If they have overtime, we check with them what is the overtime that they do. Like for example, we have to ask them what kind of attendances are there. We already have this. Secondly, we need to check whether they have the time off already available with them. And when you're using the timesheet configuration requirements, when you're gathering the timesheet requirements, I would definitely suggest to have the time of person or a consultant if you have not gone for the gatherings. So definitely work schedule is a major part here while taking the timesheet configuration into picture. So you can check with them what kind of work schedules they are into, whether they are doing the regular working hours, like the start time and end time, or they are only capturing the duration. Now, if they have duration and they have specific time types, so specific policy like they have certain start date restrictions, start time restrictions, right? That case, you will definitely have to convince them to take the work schedule into a clock in kind of variation, where you actually wanted a start time and end time, right? Now you will have to ask specific questions like whether they have overtime. Now, if the overtime is there, whether it is everything is given as a payout, or it is given as a time off, or they are both are captured. Now, let's say you also have to understand and check with them whether they have the flexi time, which is nothing but the negative time hours. And negative time hours, if they are using all the overtime as a negative time hours, or they are redirecting like what we have done, right? First part of overtime is generally redirected to the flexi time, where we are compensating with the negative hours, right? Wherever we are working less, then we compensate with the overtime hours for the which was worked on the previous day. So that kind of uh, requirement we have to ask them whether they have these kind of questions, because client will expect, instead of we talking to them, we just ask them to show what their current system is like, so that we can understand what all configurations that we need to enable, and based on that we can ask the questions. Even for the payroll, if they wanted to redirect to the payroll, you can ask them whether do they have any forfeiting of balance. Like for example, one of my customer has a requirement where they said if the compensatory off is there, right? They Some of the overtime is being redirected to the time off, and that is generally taken as a compensatory off, right? So those compensatory offs should be taken within like 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. They have this time limit. So that kind of questions we need to definitely check with them. And let's say if they are not using or not forfeiting the balance, if this balance is carried over to the end of this particular year, then you need to check with them like what kind of at the year ending processing they do, whether they do a payout everything or they lapse the balances. That we need to definitely check. So these are the questions that we need to ask them. And also we need to ask them is if they have any kind of restrictions. Like for example, we have seen, right, the overtime restrictions. If they have an overtime restriction, then what is the overtime restriction? Whether it is weekly, whether it is monthly, whether there is daily, right? And if they wanted to have any time of restrictions, any policies, like if somebody is recording hours before the login time, it should be restricted or just send a warning message. If they had these kind of questions, you will definitely ask them questions and capture it in a workbook, in a statement of work that normally we call as an SOW, right? And we also gave them a COP, like the process, the course of process that we need to do. And this is for the first time that we go and meet the client on the first day when the requirements are being gathered. And then as a normal, what I prefer is I do it on a Excel sheet. I take the configurations on the Excel sheet and also the corresponding Word document where we will tell them that this is what the process is, this is what the process is. Like for example, they have an overtime of this, they have a restriction of this, what we're going to do it, we write it on the work statement of work and we provide them for a sign off. This is the first requirement gathering where we are not filling the timesheet completely, workbook completely. So this generally comes into picture only when we start in the configuration, right? Right at that moment when we are meeting the customer, definitely will not be able to explain everything to them. So that's the reason why I was saying that we normally record it or we ask for the time policy with what they have, the document what they have, or we also ask them like the process they are currently following now, or they wanted to follow in the system, is what we wanted to check with them, and we write or document them in a Word document. Then we come back. We have certain things called as in playbacks, right? So when we do a playback, that is when we fill the configuration workbook. So after the configuration is being performed in the system, now if you look at this is exactly like what is the calculated time, what is the external name, what is the external code. This will be only coming into picture when you do an actual configuration on the system. So once I'm done with the first initial configuration, the moment we show them the first playback, generally playback is nothing but we show them the first demo, how the system looks like, right? At that point of time, we configure and we place all the configurations here. That is when we start filling the timesheet workbook. This is not similar to the employee central. Now, if you look at the employee central configuration, that is very straightforward. Whether you wanted to have the field enable, yes, no, that's what we do it, right? So but for the time of timesheet configurations, we prepare a kind of a questionnaires, whether they have time, whether they have overtime. If yes, then what kind of an overtime? If they're splitting up, what is the base rate, what is the premium rate? Are they working on public holidays? Are they working on work non-working days? What is the non-working day hours to be recorded, and should it be going as an payout or a compensatory off? If it is a compensatory off, you have to have a following corresponding questions with them so that they can fill that questions and come back to us, and we configure the system and then we provide them. After we finish the first playback, that is when the first draft of a timesheet workbook generally gets ready. So this only comes only when we start configuring in the system, and that's what you see here, right? The time valuations and everything. This is generally done only when you have completed the actual configuration in the system. Later on, based upon their also the timesheet admissibility, also we check with them whether the approved timesheets have to be made changes according to the uh, what kind of weeks. You have to explain the limitation to them that it cannot be done on the monthly basis, so definitely have to have it in a weekly hours. So that you have to get this workflow. Definitely yes. What kind of approvers they wanted to have, whether it is a one level, two level, if they have any conditional workflows, that also you can mention. And the time valuation period, so generally it's always the week, month, but how they wanted to see it on the system, whether it had to be started with a Monday or a Tuesday or a Sunday. Generally by default, as we have Sunday as a starting day, that you can have these are the first evaluation configuration questionnaires that we normally talk to customers. And in case they wanted to use any custom fields, right, if they wanted to have any custom fields, they can also mention that. Custom fields are specifically enabled when we record the hours, right, where we choose the cost centers. If they wanted to have additional fields, you can have that captured here. So validation rules, if they have certain rules, like what you have seen in the simple example, if somebody is recording the hours more than 2 hours for the job training, they should be raised with an error message. This is similar to the EC rules that we create. And this part of section is generally started with the clock in, clock outs. So what kind of clock in, clock out they wanted to have. And the groups also, type of an attendance groups, what they wanted to have. And the configuration mapping. So So the configuration mapping, this is the standard one. Like what event has to be mapped with what of the time type or a attendance type, that we configure it. So these are the general settings. This is normally a sync. This is nothing to do with us. It generally takes care by the integration teams. So they just enable the synchronization date, which is nothing but a general start replication date. So this is about the timesheet configuration workbook. So the timesheet configuration workbook, as I said, it's not similar to the EC one. This will be this sheet can be filled only once the solution is completely configured on the system, and you can just have a what I usually do is for time off or timesheet. After my complete configuration is done, I just do a export of these objects. So sorry, one second. So normally what I do is we normally do is import and export data. We just export the data. Let's say if it is time type, right? So we generally have the export of time type. And whatever it comes out is actually similar to the drop downs that we see here in the workbook, this one. And we just copy paste from what we have exported it. And that is how the actual configuration is filled into the timesheet. So these are the general tips which I follow, but everybody has their own set of requirement gathering. So what I would suggest is the more we ask the questions, the more we interact with customers. That is when we have the process properly defined for it. So that's what I do as my um, from my past previous experiences. This is what we have been doing it, and trust me, it's really the questions that we kind of an ask. We know the system, definitely client won't have that system knowledge. So the moment we start asking them questions, they will try to give the various scenarios that they have encountered, and we can also ask them and convince them what are the limitations, what are the capabilities the system will have, and how we can configure those requirements. That can be easily understandable by uh, by by having the more and more conversations. So this is about the timesheet configurations. With that, I conclude my session for today. In case you guys have any questions going forward, if you're trying to configure in the system, if you have various questions, definitely try to reach out to Winhorn team. They will help us to set up in case any sessions are needed. They can coordinate with us, and then we can connect in case needed, or we can help you out. The specific documentations or any of the requirements that you have. So normally we would be sharing you the timesheet configuration workbook, the PDFs that is needed, the actual PDF for the configuration steps, and also the additional documentation that is needed for you to configure, that we will be able to help you out. So team would be sending out these documents along with the timesheet configuration workbook as well. Apart from that, if you guys have any questions, definitely reach out to them and make sure you try it in the system looking at the recordings. In case you feel that it's not working or it's not working as expected, please try to reach out at any point of time. We'll be able to help you out. I hope you had a great learning session.
Yes, Lata, for sure. It was a very great session. And as you advised, definitely we are going to reach out to Windhorn team, and maybe would be needing a follow-up session with you probably. Till the time, I would like to go through all the recordings of yours, and then probably I'll be having a list of questions that I'll be having, and then we'll connect to the Windhorn team, and we'll be having a follow-up sessions with you.
Sure,
Just two quick questions. Yeah, thank you, Lata. And two quick questions regarding this report. So, what are the requirements normally from the from client? Is there a lot of requirements related to time report, or how it is? For talent modules, we have prepared this ad hoc report, but as you are saying that for time management, it is Canvas report. But I don't understand. I don't think that a functional consultant would be, really capable of preparing a Canvas report, and would be needing a reporting consultant for that, right? So how do you cater that?
Consultant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, whatever the requirement, whatever the standard reports which SAP provides, most probably when we have seen the customers, they were okay. They were okay with whatever the requirements they had. But in case specifically they need any, so normally when we have seen, they will have specific fields that they wanted to enable for, like for the job information. By default, the system will provide you only the department or a business unit kind of structures. But let's say if they are using any custom fields, right, like sub departments or subdivisional zones or some kind of things, if they wanted to enable it, they this specifically what we do is we copy the existing framework, not needed to create it from the scratch. But and definitely, Madhumita, that's actually very easy also on the ORD report. It's similar to what we have done, but only the configurational wise, like the steps that we need to follow is a kind of a changes. Definitely in the SAP KBAs, we have different KBAs where we wanted to make the changes. They have a step by step guide also provided. If you wanted to add, it's just an enable it. You edit the report and you go to that report and make the changes, just like what you do for the ad hoc reports, right? Select the columns and add it to the columns. The UI will be little different, but the columns and selection and adding of all things is one and the same thing. It's not that complicated. And what I have seen is whatever the standard reports which are provided by SAP are sufficing most of the customers requirement. They are not nothing to do with, there's no much complexity in making the changes to that report also if needed.
Okay. So definitely, I'd be looking forward, to all the required documents, additional documents, and conflict documents, everything that you are going to provide us, and also relevant KVS as you mentioned right now, if you could provide, so maybe it would be a little easier for me to go through directly to to those KVS. And
Sure, I'll try to find that KBS and give it to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Lata. Thank you. Really appreciate. And one more thing related to this integration. So if it is SF time management and SF SuccessFactor play role, then ECP, yeah, correct, ECP. So as I understand that the destination module should be having the required configuration to pull the data from the source module. So even for that also you need an integration consultant, or you are talking about the external, some other legacy system, maybe SAP payroll and SF time management. For that we need an integration consultant. How it is, or in both the cases we need an integration consultant?
So for definitely for both the cases we need an integration integration, whether it is ECP payroll or if it is a standard third party system also, definitely we would need an integration center, because integration consultant, because they will have that the enablement, like what we do it in the EC as a consultant, right? Only we will know it. The integration consultant is definitely needed in such cases, because they will know what part to enable it and what kind of mapping should be done. So that is definitely needed. So we only, as a functional consultant, we only coordinate with them and we provide them the required data that is needed for integration. But however, the settings and everything, whatever need to be done, has to be done by the integration consultant only.
Okay, 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 fine. And the last question is like time management is now not a part of EC module. So if someone like one of our client they want to implement times, then they have to procure the separate license for time, right? And it's not no more a part of EC now.
That's right. Yeah, they will have to have a separate parts. Yes.
Oh, fine, Lata. So I think right now I'm good, and then I'll go through the recordings and then I'll again reach out to you.
Sure, sure, definitely, Madhumita. That would be helpful.
Lata, for all the good sessions that you done for us.
Thank you so much, and taking time for listening to us patiently and asking questions. I would definitely feel that you this knowledge will help you out somewhere, and will help you
For
understand
sure,
the system
yes.
properly.